In this session, I will be explaining how master planning works in Dynamics 365. For this particular example, I will first create a demand forecast for the item. After that, I will see the requirements that are generated for that item. In this particular session, we will see in a work order requirement. Then I will run the master planning and I will see how the system suggests me to purchase that item based on the quantities of the forecast and the requirement of the work order. So if I go to the master planning module, to the demand forecasting section, if I go to generate statistical baseline forecast, I can select how my forecast is going to be generated and from which dates. Here, for example, I will take the historical information from 2012 to 2018, and I will generate the forecast from March of 2018. So I will run the process. If I want, I can only run this process for certain items or all the items. Here I select that in the query of the process. After the process is done, if I go to the adjust demand forecast menu item, I will see how the system suggests me the forecast based on the historical data. Here, the products I'm using for this example are the ones that start with the code parts. As you can see, the system is suggesting me this forecast for the following months. And after this, I can authorize the demand forecast so that the system will update that information within the item. Okay, here I select the dates and the companies. And if I go to my release items form, I will go to that particular item. And I will go to the demand forecast of that item. I will see that the system update me the information with the forecast that I just authorized in the previous form. Okay, so if I go to the item coverage of this item, as we can see, we also set a minimum for the item. So when we run the master planning, the system will take into account the requirements, the forecast, and this minimum. If I go to the work orders that are created for this item, I will go to work order 102. And I'm going to see the item requirements of this work order. Here, as you can see, I have the requirement for this item with this quantity. So I'm going to run the master planning. I'm going to select my plan, and I'm going to run it. So if I go to the plan orders, after the process has finished, I'll go to my plan. So here, if I refresh the page, I will see all the planned purchase order that the system generated. Here I see one planned purchase order per requirement. Here I have the forecast requirements. And here I can see my minimum requirement and my work order requirement. If I go to the detail of this planned purchase order, I will be able to see the pegging of that order. Here, I see that this order was generated because a requirement of a demand forecast. If I go to another one, for example, this one, I will see that this order has a pay into a safety stock. That is the minimum that I set up in the item coverage of the product. And in this one, I see that comes from the requirement of a sales order. That is the item requirement that was generated from the work order that we showed previously. If I go to the work order, to the item requirement, so here I will go to the increase of this requirement. And from here, I also can see the relation between the plan order and this specific requirement. Here it is, my plan purchase order for the quantity of 12. And in the pegging section, we can see the reference and the requirement date. Also, it is important to take into account that right now the system generates me one planned purchase order per requirement. This is because in the configuration of the coverage of that item, here, I will go there. We said that the coverage group is per requirement. Okay, I can change this configuration. For example, if I want it to be per period, if I set up a coverage group per period, the system, instead of making me one planned purchase order per requirement, it will create me one planned purchase order for all the requirements that are within the same period. This will help me to reduce the number of planned purchase orders, and by consequence, the number of transactions that are generated. This is helpful if I want to consolidate requirements. Also, I have the possibility, if I go to the plan orders form again, to group these requirements manually. Here, in the action pane, have that option. So I consolidate these two planned purchase order, and if I go to the detail, I will see that the pegging now has two lines, one of the safety stock and one of the sales order. And the quantity, it is the sum of the two planned purchase orders that I already consolidated.